When I was younger, I used to think about sex a lot. I used to think about the pleasures of being perhaps inebriated, the pleasures of having freedom in life. As I grow older, I think about the pleasure of discipline. I think about the pleasure of responsibility. Khalil Gibran is a phenomenal poet and artist. His book, The Prophet, has been one of my guiding texts for many, many years. And I want to give you this writing so that you may ponder it, so that perhaps you may look at the world more optimistically. My name's Tarab. I make videos about emotional intelligence every day, and today we will be going over On Pleasure by Khalil Gibran. Then a hermit who visited the city once a year came forth and said, "Speak to us of pleasure." And he answered, saying, "Pleasure is a freedom song, but it is not freedom. It is the blossoming of your desires, but it is not their fruit. It is a depth calling onto a height, but it is not the deep nor the height. It is the caged, talking wing, but it is not space encompassed. In very truth, pleasure is a freedom song, and I fain would have you sing it with fullness of heart, yet I would not have you lose your hearts in the singing. Some of your youth seek pleasure as if it were all, and they are judged and rebuked. I would not judge nor rebuke them. I would have them seek. For they shall find pleasure, but not her alone. 7 are her sisters, and the least of them is more beautiful than pleasure. Have you not heard of the man who was digging in the earth for roots and found a treasure? And some of your elders remember pleasures with regret, like wrongs committed in drunkenness. But regret is a beclouding of the mind, and not its chastisement. They should remember their pleasures with gratitude, as they would the harvest of a summer. Yet if it comforts them to regret, let them be comforted. And there are those among you who are neither young to seek nor old to remember, and in their fear of seeking and remembering, they shun all pleasures, lest they neglect the spirit or offend against it. But even in their foregoing is their pleasure, and thus they too find treasure through digging for roots with quivering hands. But tell me, who is he that can offend the spirit? Shall the nightingale offend the stillness of the night, or the firefly the stars? And shall your flame or your smoke burden the wind? Think you that spirit is still a pool? Is a still pool which you can trouble with a staff? Oftentimes in denying yourself pleasure, you do but store the desire in the recess of your being. Who knows but that which seems omitted today waits for tomorrow? Even your body knows its heritage and its rightful need and will not to be deceived. But your body is a harp of your soul, and it is yours to bring forth sweet music from it or confused sounds. And now you ask in your heart, how shall we distinguish that which is good in pleasure and that which is not good? Go to your fields and to your gardens, and you shall learn that it is the pleasure of the bee to gather honey of the flower, but it is also the pleasure of the flower to yield its honey to the bee. For to the bee a flower is a fountain of life, and the flower is a bee, and to the flower a bee is a messenger of love. And to both bee and flower the giving and the receiving of pleasure is a need and an ecstasy. People of Orphalese, be in your pleasures like the flowers and the bees. I'm going to read some of these parts over again. Some of your youth seek pleasure as if it were all, and they are judged and rebuked. I would not judge them or rebuke them. I would have them seek. How many times in our lives, in my life, have I had hedonistic spouts? Times where I have essentially wasted hours and hours of my life in ecstasy. Many years of my life. Playing when I was young outside. Yu-Gi-Oh, tennis, wrestling, water gun fights, climbing trees, pleasure. Going to parties, having sex, pleasure. Do I judge my past self for doing that? Hell no. Why? Why would I? It's what makes me capable of perhaps conveying some useful thoughts to you. Through my pleasure I've been seeking. For they shall find pleasure, but not her alone. So in our hedonism, we'll find pleasure. But there's other stuff we'll find out. 7 are her sisters. And the least of them is more beautiful than pleasure. He's saying that, oh yeah, you're trying to do this to have fun. But the most interesting part of having fun is learning the difficulties of life. I believe the 7 that he's referring to are the deadly sins. Let me see if I can count them for you. Lust, gluttony, greed, pride, vanity, envy. Nope, not vanity, wrath, envy. Do I remember the last one? Gluttony. Gluttony. They are the 7 sisters of pleasure. Turns out they're really evil, right? No, they're not. They teach us things. It's a part of life to be lustful. It's a part of life to want more things. It's a part of life to enjoy food, or consuming movies, or consuming artwork. It's a part of life to get angry and get emotional about things. It's a part of life to have boundaries and constraints, and to believe in something. It's a part of life to want what others have, to acquire characteristics that we believe are beautiful and beneficial in our life. But how do we go and find these things if we don't have a sense of play? How do we get the lessons out of them if we don't have that sense that we deserve pleasure in life? Now we can all think about the person, the older individual that always reminisces about their youth, about the times that they went out and had too many drinks, or the times that they had a weekend away with someone very special, or the times they spent with their parents or their siblings. But many of them perhaps think of these pleasures as something that do not exist anymore, and thus are sad by it, rather than being grateful for the experiences that they had. He also talks about this is very interesting. Some of you might fall into this category. And there are those among you who are neither young to seek nor old to remember. And in their fear of seeking and remembering, they shun all pleasures. Asexual. I find myself doing this these days. Feeling bad about spending money on things that we enjoy. Having the philosophy that we need to save everything. I suffer with this. Making sure to spend time disciplined all day. It's now turned into pleasure, but in the process, it was me trying to retract. Now this comes up again, digging for roots and finding treasure. Digging for roots and finding treasure reminds me something of, I assume the roots that he's talking about are either food, there are certain roots that we can eat, or it might be that the tree itself is something beautiful we see above ground, but we're trying to see how that tree functions. And in trying to figure out how that tree functions, we find perhaps a bunch of microbes, perhaps other things that are buried in the soil that can feed us treasure. Oftentimes, in denying yourself pleasure, you do but store the desire in the recesses of your brain, of your being. Who knows but that which seems omitted today waits for tomorrow. Sometimes, when you're in a dark place, you're not buried, you're planted. And the flowers and the bees. Now, the flowers and the bees are a really nice way for me to imagine microscopically what happens at a macro scale in ecosystems. And essentially the philosophy that is transmitted to what it means to be wealthy in human civilization. That business, for instance, anything that we offer other people that's unique to us and we're particularly good at, is like the bee offering that thing to a flower. Whichever part of the equation you are, at least knowing that you have that thing to offer and need that thing will move us, I believe, in a direction of being more connected as human beings. So hopefully you found something useful out of this chapter on pleasure. And hopefully in your pleasures, you are also seeking and being grateful for those times that perhaps you wasted. I know after reading pages of this book, I think back to a lot of pleasure that I've had. A lot of lost love, a lot of perhaps wasted time. And at the end of the day, I can't help but think how lucky I am to be able to sit here and talk to you. If you liked this video, please click that thumbs up button, helps me out a lot. Share it with someone that's particularly spiritual. Perhaps pick up this book, Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. Subscribe if you'd like to see me more. And this is a video that I made on the last chapter in The Prophet. Every single one has something phenomenal to take away from it. Actualize your potential catalyst. This world needs you. Take care of yourself.